We got a special midweek episode for y'all in between race weeks. I'm back with Chris, and we got a special guest, Rob Beaumont, with us, hailing from New York, originally from Australia. How you doing, my guy?
Tyler, thanks for having me on, guys. It's obviously great to be part of the program. Things are great here in New York. Awesome weather outside, and the weekend's kicked off. So things are
Hell
looking
yeah,
up.
man.
Let's put it that way.
Chris, how we doing this week?
Oh, we're vibing. The last 2 days have been hectic for me back at work, but here we are. We're doing a new episode. We got our first guest, Rob, and yeah, we're just looking forward to having a good episode and have some fun F1 talk, especially because no races this weekend. That's always a bummer, and yeah, just some cool news I guess we can cover today.
No, yeah, for sure. We're excited to have Rob with us today. We're going to plug all of his stuff here in a bit and make sure you give him a nice follow on Twitter. And he's a big F1 fantasy guy, and we're going to get things going. But guys, let's talk about this last Australian Grand Prix a little bit just to get off the back foot. What's going on with Aston Martin?
Where do you
Yeah,
start, right?
Rob,
Yeah, dude.
what are your takes on Aston Martin? Because we think they're the worst car on the grid by far, sadly.
Yeah, it's surprising to be honest. I really thought they made a few good steps forward last year, and with a new team principal in Mike Crack, which is kind of a funny name, I have to admit. That they've had a pretty underwhelming start to the year. I guess probably wasn't helped by Seb being absent as well for the first two races, and I mean that crash on the weekend from Stroll. You just don't really love to see that if you're turning around new cars multiple times on the same weekend. What about you guys? What's the situation down in their garage?
I
Yeah,
mean,
so
honestly, yeah, it's the same thing. Go ahead, Chris.
yeah, I was gonna say like coming into the season, like when they released like those renderings of what their car was gonna look like, I thought that was the best looking car, and I was like super pumped. They got Seb, they have Stroll, who I think is he's good. He's good enough to
Mm.
race. He's a good secondary driver, and then they have all the experience with Seb and. Yeah, Aston Martin was making like leaps and bounds with their aero division. At least I thought so because they had like the Valkyrie car and like they were really pushing that aero. And then yeah, it just came out as a big dud, big stinker.
Yeah, I to like second that. Like you said, it doesn't help that the first two races they couldn't compete with their full driver lineup, so that sucks. But this at the same time, like with Seb being so close to the factory all the off season with the car, he should be familiar with it. But even this past weekend, him being in it, it looked completely foreign. He had no idea how it handled under braking. He had no idea what it was going to do in the corners. I mean, even with Stroll, he looks like it's completely foreign still, and he's three races deep into it. So it's a weird car. It's weird because I thought McLaren had a laundry list of things. I thought they were still troubleshooting what the problem was. They didn't even know. But now I think that's for Aston Martin. I don't even think they know what's happening yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's probably also some of that has to do with the Mercedes engine as well, right? That seems to be plaguing almost half the number of constructors on the grid this year. Like, McLaren
Yeah,
has suffered, Williams are under the pump, and there's well documented struggles with Lewis and George's cars at Mercedes as well. So they're the back markers at the moment, but I'd expect them to turn things around at some point.
and dude, it's so weird to think that Mercedes is they're the best of the rest, right? I mean, and
Hmm.
even though they're saying like we had the fifth fastest car, I mean that it's like really who else can be better than the Mercedes engine? Ferrari's obviously improved a lot, but I mean, they were talking to like, yeah, our racing engine has all these championship pedigree to it, and like, what's going on?
okay, and if I'm not mistaken, this is just me being ignorant on this subject, but we have Mercedes power, Ferrari power, Honda, not technically Honda power, it's Red Bull powertrains, but it's like powered by Honda because they're kind of showing them what to do. Who is Alpine with? It's not, is it still
It's
Renault
Renault.
engines?
Yeah,
Renault, yeah.
It's still Renault. Okay, so Ferrari from 2019 to 2020 to really now, because last year they even made leaps and bounds. Their engine has caught up. Mercedes has taken a back seat. Red Bull powertrains, they don't know what the hell's going on with their engine right now.
Yeah. Hey, their car looks like it never left Saudi Arabia the way it's blowing up.
Dude, like
Mm.
it, dude, it's I, I don't understand. They said it was a vacuum in the fuel pump the first time. Now they said Helmut Marko comes out and says, "Hey, the 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 situation with the car is actually it's very much more complex than what we thought, and we really don't know what's going on with the engines right now." And I'm not sure where they sit with that right now because they're debuting their brand new powertrain division, and I don't know what's going on.
I mean, it's interesting because, they just can't seem to get a full race out of the car, whether it's Max or Checo. And, when Max does finish a race, he's won 100% of the races this year.
That's what I'm saying. It's so volatile that it can't be we win the race or we DNF. It can't be that to have a successful year.
Exactly. And I mean, Checo, he had obviously that first race DNF, but since then, he had that otherworldly quali in Saudi Arabia and, had a sound result last weekend. So it's seeming like he doesn't have nearly as many problems, but, they're obviously there, right? They just don't know what it is, like you say.
So I made up this conspiracy theory after the first race when they both DNF'd, and I think it might be relevant still. I think that they're pushing the cars pushing too much whenever they're using DRS and using all their energy. That's my theory, is that when they're pushing the car too much, it just like overwhelms it and they can't really regulate it.
So basically your theory is like it's got a super high ceiling, but once they get to that ceiling, it's so volatile that they ride it on the limit, but once it hits the limit, it's just gonna break. There is
Yeah,
no like give to it. There's no.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Max, the first race, the car gave out when he was chasing Leclerc, and
That's
then
true.
if you look at this last race, like Leclerc ran away, and it was nothing too much was happening, and then they had that restart right after the safety
Mm.
car, and then they had a little bit of a battle on the first straight and maybe the second DRS zone, and then after that it was Leclerc running away again. But I'm thinking, what if in that push they just really got the car going a little too much, and then I don't know,
Yeah.
just
I mean,
speculation
shout
here.
out Christian Horner, dude. I guess he's falling back on his word. Freaking, I'd rather have a fast car than a reliable one. What? You got to see the finish line, dog.
I mean, that was almost a stab at Mercedes, right? Because,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
that
Oh, it's 100% a stab at Mercedes.
yeah, it's. I mean, I agree. He's probably got the better car than Mercedes do at the moment, but at the same time, it's, like you're saying, they just don't know what the problems are, and if you can't get a full race out of it, then you got to kind of go back to square one, right?
So
Yeah.
so do you think they have a better car if they keep DNFing? At what point do you draw the line? You're like, okay, the
Yeah.
car is faster sometimes, but is it gonna make it? Does that make it a better car? I don't
I
know.
mean, it really depends on what these upgrades that all these teams are talking about for Imola, right? It seems like Mercedes I just saw something on Twitter about an hour ago that their upgrades are now being pushed back to Spain, and I don't quite know what Red Bull's updates are for Imola, but it seems like because it's much closer to a lot of their bases in Europe, there's all these parts that are compounding into this one location in Italy. So I guess we'll see closer to the first practice session what those updates and upgrades are. But
Yeah,
I still think
speaking of
Red Bull are probably a bit further ahead of that than Mercedes, at least what I'm
no,
Yeah.
reading.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And speaking of those upgrades, I mean, now that you say that they're pushing it to Spain, which honestly, I actually think what just as far as upgrades go, this weekend almost favors Red Bull because they ain't got to worry about reliability with the first sprint race this year. This next weekend's the first sprint race, and they just got to make it through that and favor themselves in position and hope they can just keep the car managed
Limp
because
that thing.
dude, yeah, just make it to the end even if it's a P1 through 5. Make it to the end and stay in P3 like because
Mm.
Ferrari, you cannot let Ferrari have like 2 race gaps on you. You just can't because they're going to run away with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think like it's all well and good if Max is dropping 5-10 points a race to Charles just because of the pace or the the powertrain. But like you guys say, if you're losing 25 points, you're not finishing a race, and the championship leader and Leclerc is churning through 18, 25, 26 points a race. There isn't going to be a world championship defense come the fourth or fifth week of the season.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, I guess you're into the fantasy F1. Can you like break it down a little bit how it works, and like how does this situation affect fantasy F1? With Max DNF and then Leclerc, like that must be your money pick right there if you got Leclerc.
Yeah, it's pretty, depending on how much background you guys have about it. Essentially, you have 5 players, 5 drivers, should I say, and 1 constructor you choose from every week. I mean, as with any kind of fantasy sport, there's a budget, and each player has their own price determined ahead of the season. Ferrari are understandably the popular picks at the moment, given how well they've done so far. But Max and Lewis, they're the 2 highest price drivers of the game, understandably, just because of their experience, their credentials. But you're seeing both of them struggle through the first 3 races of the season. No one really wants to pick them in their team because of that unreliability.
Yeah, it's just so volatile.
Right?
It's either like the best results ever or no results at all, really.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And I mean, someone like Esteban Ocon, who has flown under the radar, I think, a little bit in the first few races. He finished top 7 in all of the 3 races so far. And for someone who's kind of a mid-priced option, is actually doing much better than, your Hamiltons, your Verstappens. So, it's those kind of picks in the midfield that actually seem to reap the most benefit for people who play the game, because, Charles, Carlos are obviously 2 excellent drivers, and a lot of people have them. George Russell's done okay so far. Lando's coming into a bit of form. So, you got to, find those diamonds in the rough that are at that mid-priced option in the midfield that kind of can make or break your score each week.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, Tyler and I, we did fantasy football with a lot of our friends from high school.
Reigning champion,
last year.
Just to say, reigning champion.
Tyler is the champion. I gotta say, man, if I didn't trade away Jonathan Taylor, I would have been the champ. So, if Coach put me in the 4th quarter, we would have been state champs, baby. That's all I'm saying. But,
oh my god.
Yeah, I like to pride myself in fantasy football at being like the bargain finder, like looking for like that pick on the waiver wire that everyone's kind of I'm looking for the sleepers. I love having a sleeper team, and I kind of got lucky last year with Cordero Patterson. If you follow football,
I do.
Yeah, he saved my butt so much last year, and so I guess you're saying your sleeper pick this year, is it Esteban Ocon, or do you have someone else so far?
Look, I think Ocon's done very well so far at the price point he's at. He's around 12.5 million, whereas Lewis and Max are 30 plus. So when you're getting that kind of value out of a low priced option, that's what you want. Magnussen's obviously another enabler. He was the cheapest option in the game at the start of the season and had that phenomenal first race, and then also was in the points in Saudi Arabia. So, being able to just take advantage of those more budget-friendly options, and then obviously pick those premium picks that do well each week. Checo's had a couple of good races as well so far. But like you say, I guess the equivalent of the waiver wire is being able to, because everyone can pick all of the drivers, has access to choosing all of the drivers, it's being able to choose those differential picks that probably have a lower ownership or are not, as high a price, that are going to get you those points because they're on a solid midfield team that are going to be in contention every week.
Oh, okay, so that makes sense.
So it kind of works out. I don't know if I'm hearing it right, but in fantasy F1, I guess you'd be considered constructor. So every constructor gets to pick from all the drivers, and let's say all 3 of us are in a league, we can all pick Lewis Hamilton if we wanted.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so we just have to. All right, we have to build out of the 20 drivers that are options. We have to build the best team of 5 and potentially win that weekend against other opponents.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
sweet.
yeah.
And you can,
like, sorry, go on.
I was going to say you can sell your players, or are you picking new players every week?
You have 3 free transfers to make every week, so it's very easy to remodel your team if you're not happy with 2 or 3 of the options. And then for an additional 3 picks, 3 trades, every additional trade you make after those first 3 cost you 10 points on your weekend score. So it's really about finding, if you want to overhaul your team, whether you're getting in a player is worth that 10-point deficit. But I'm usually someone that tries to make at least 1 or 2, and because the price of these picks are also factored into your trades, you want to obviously have a budget that grows steadily, so towards the end of the season you're able to afford more premium options.
Okay, that makes way more sense. That's actually kind of cool. I actually like that model. That model makes total sense. But speaking on the Esteban Ocon situation, do you, with that logic, do you feel the same? Would you also put, because I have Pierre Gasly being one of those sleepers, minus the DNF first race, because there was that weird weekend of 3 out of the 4 Red Bull powertrain powered engines DNF that weekend, with Pierre, Checo, and Max all going out for seemingly the same issue. Minus that, I think Pierre Gasly is another consistent sleeper that I think he's consistently getting everything out of that AlphaTauri car.
Yeah, Tyler, I have to agree. I'm huge on Gasly. I'm really high on him. I really like him as a driver. And I think ever since he had that success at Monza, was it 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
That, I've really liked him and his ability to compete with some of those better teams on the grid. He's actually priced around Ocon's range, so they can certainly be alternated. And he's someone I want to get into my team. Not right now, but hopefully he finds some form and his price drops a little bit, a couple of $100,000, and I'll be getting him in right away because he's got the potential and everyone knows what he's capable of.
Yeah, we need a couple Gasly DNFs to get that price down for you, Rob.
Yeah,
he wants to short the stock, dude. Oh my god.
Funny you say that. I won't kind of drag on too much about this, but during the week on Reddit, there were some players of the game that were pumping Haas and a couple of low-owned assets to increase their price. So it's also just for some additional background, the prices not only are dependent on how well the driver does, but also on how many trades players make for the drivers during the week. So it's obviously the demand, let's say.
So they have a whole okay.
There's a whole algorithm, that dictates the price. And so during the week, these people on Reddit and Discord are pretty much going all in on Norris or on Ricciardo or on Haas, the constructor. And given the demand, the prices are just flying up to increase these budgets. And then they're going to sell them at their peak and then cash in on, other assets. So it's interesting.
Hell.
It reminds me of the meme stock craze last year where everyone was in on AMC and
GameStop,
dude.
GameStop, yeah.
We had a group chat with a bunch of our friends, and it was wild that week.
We were getting pretty degenerate, definitely. One of our buddies was up pretty high, and I gave him some bad advice. I told him to keep holding. I literally just bought some, and I wish I told him to sell. But so sorry about that, Ryan.
Sorry about that, Ryan.
But yeah, okay. I had another question. I think I saw something on your Twitter about like super points or like a bonus of some sort for fantasy F1. Maybe can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So each week you choose, I guess, the simplest, let's call it a chip or an option you can do each week is to choose one driver in your team as your turbo driver, and that's essentially the captain of your team for this week. So whatever points they score, it's doubled. The catch there is, however, that your turbo driver has to be under $20 million. So fortunately, Leclerc has had a Leclerc has had a blinder so far, and everyone's just kept him as the turbo driver. And I guess that's also to avoid, the last 2, 3, 4 years, it's really either been Hamilton or Verstappen. It stops people from pretty much using them as the two each week.
Yeah.
So he sits at around, I think it's 18.8, 18 point, something like that. So he's approaching 20 million. And obviously when he reaches that, you won't be able to do that. So that's one. That's the turbo driver option. And then there's the mega driver, which you can only use once in a season. And that's, I guess, a captaincy pick for your team again. And that triples their score, that triples the driver's score when you put that onto them. So because there are more points on offer in a sprint race, or the other side of that is the streaks, which depending on how well a driver does in multiple races consecutively, they build on their streaks. And so once they cash in on a streak, they're eligible for more points in that race week. So I know that's a lot to download. If we just take one step back,
Okay, I'm following you. I have one question though. So if you have your the double points that you can use every week, right? Your team leader, can you stack on that? So you have the turbo points, and then the other one, I forgot what you said. The mega. Can you stack your mega and turbo on the same guy?
No, unfortunately, you can't.
Okay, I thought you found the cheat code.
Yeah,
found the loophole.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if you could, that would probably break the game.
Oh, that would be game breaking for sure.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc double, triple sprint race. That sounds like a recipe for game over.
A lot of points, put it that way. So yeah, obviously we've got the Imola sprint race that's next weekend, and then come Miami, assuming Ferrari get through Imola in one piece, Leclerc should have streaks lined up after doing so well for the first 3 races. And so I guess the consideration a lot of fantasy players have at the moment is whether to use the mega driver chip for Imola or to wait until Miami and cash in on the streak.
I think you got to do it at Miami, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning towards, but there's also a lot of preference towards Imola. I mean, the alternate for those two would be to wait until Austria, but I'm probably a little too impatient to wait that long.
I guess the safe option is Imola, because now that every team has come out saying they're basically not doing any upgrades at Imola. No one really is putting upgrades at Imola. It's basically going to stay the same results, kind of, maybe a little bit more mixed, but kind of the same results it's been for the first 3 races. Those good drivers are going to be up there. The bottom driver is going to be down there. I think that's the safe option, but I think if you want to cash in, you got to do it at Miami.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to personal preference. I don't think there's a wrong answer, to be honest. I'm leaning towards Miami, but again, there's a bit of sentiment towards Imola too. I guess the risk with Imola is, because you're competing. Well, I guess you're competing every day, aren't you? But you're ultimately racing during the sprint, and you're racing again on the Sunday. So that increases the likelihood of someone crashing, right?
That's true.
If you crash in your DNF, you get deducted points from your total score. So it's really very dependent on your risk appetite.
Yeah, and depending on that crash, if a crash does in fact happen Saturday, that could have immediate implications on your Sunday. So, I mean, you're right. No, that could be insanely bad, actually.
And so you're saying if you DNF, you lose points. What if you doubled up your points and then he DNFs? Do you do double the loss?
Yes, you do.
Oh. Latifi owners?
Latifi owners? Yeah, what's the stock on Latifi right now in fantasy?
He's not high. I was looking at him earlier today, and I think he was around 5% ownership, it actually has less than 5%. So
okay, all right. I hate to harp on it, but we got to transition. Does he keep his seat next year? Does he? I know his dad he's very instrumental and he's a very big investor for Williams, but at one point, does his own son start costing his dad enough money? Because
Chris, what do you reckon?
Chris.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, Latifi, dude. If I'm Williams, I'm canning him. Honestly, I would try to get rid of him before the season ends if possible.
Oh my
Sure.
God.
Okay.
I
Heavy,
asked.
heavy opinion.
I'd honestly rather have Mazepin on my team than Latifi.
Wow.
Oh,
That's
no,
a
no,
big
I'm just
statement.
that's a big statement. No, I'm
I
just
mean, I
it's just I just don't know. Like I know Latifi's like Stroll for me because I respect Stroll so much now because after seeing I understand he was a little bit difficult to be around 2017 when he debuted. 2018 was but he's gotten better and he has at least proven 100% that he can race and keep up given a
Mm.
reliable car. But the Aston Martin really isn't showing him that much this year. But on top of that, Latifi has managed to crash. Counting the last two races last year, he has managed to crash 5 consecutive race weekends in a row. Like that's not a good look.
okay.
Not at
I
all.
will say, let me walk it back a little bit on Mazepin. I feel like they're both in the same boat where even they were on like the worst teams at the time, and they were just consistently getting out qualified and just dominated by their team, their teammate. So I don't know.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, he's not looking like a Formula One driver at the moment either. But I mean, who do you replace him with? There isn't really, too many people that would, seamlessly slot into that role if Williams did give him the boot, midway through the season. I mean, the obvious pick for me, if hypothetically he was replaced, would be Piastri at Alpine. But I mean, he's obviously kind of lined up for Alonso's seat when he retires. It just really depends on when that is.
Yeah, and I think Alonso was saying he wants to race for 3 more years or something like that.
Mm,
So I think he could be a great fit for Williams, like you're saying.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he's got all the potential, and there are a lot of people who are really high on Piastri. I also love him because he's Aussie, so it'd be great to have another Aussie in the on the grid. And I think the other driver that was potentially lined up to take George Russell's old seat was Nick De Vries. I think he's
Dude, that would
in
have been
Formula,
interesting.
yeah, I think he's in Formula E at the moment. I can't say I follow it too closely, but I know he's obviously got a high ceiling as well in Formula One. Should he make his way onto the grid at a future point in time?
No, yeah, that's actually like it was weird. It was weird that we were talking about these different lineups because earlier I had this weird hot take. I don't know if there's a world we see this. I don't know if it's possible, but let's just say Daniel Ricciardo signed through next year, correct?
Mm.
His contract expires next year. Let's say it doesn't go super well for him. I'm a huge Danny Rick fan. I don't want him to leave. But let's just say that second seat comes open in McLaren. And what if we see a weird driver lineup, which I think it'd be cool, an Alex Albon and Lando Norris at McLaren, and that Williams seat gets open for somebody.
Yeah,
That's very possible.
that would be crazy. That would be, and it's kind of weird because Albon was the Red Bull guy, and now he's at Williams. So I mean, I guess going to McLaren, that's sticking with that Mercedes power. But like that man, he would have definitely the weirdest transitions, honestly.
Yeah, I
That I
mean,
think
there's so many
it's
options,
weird. It's a
right?
long shot. It's a long shot, trust me. But it,
Mm.
it's it's a weird lineup, and I think it'd be kind of cool to see actually.
I think once you get to that midpoint in the season where it's almost like musical chairs as it was this time or as it was last year, there's so many different hypothetical scenarios that people drum up. And it just doesn't seem like there's going to be too much change next year because there are so many of the drivers are locked into multi-year contracts. But
Hmm.
if
Yeah.
there's going to be any movement, it's going to be in the kind of midfield or back market teams on the grid.
Yeah, and here's the other one is we've been talking about this. I think everyone is. What's going to happen to Pierre Gasly? Like
Yeah,
where does he
where is
go?
he gonna go? Because honestly, man, like I said earlier, I think he's reached the ceiling at AlphaTauri. He has
Mm,
gotten everything he can out of that car.
mm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Checo's contract's up at the end of this year, and Gasly's is through
Both of
to the end
theirs
of
are.
next year. Oh,
Or
okay, okay, that might be right. I know Checo's is definitely up this year, so it really
yeah,
comes down to whether Red Bull want to renew his or,
dude, it's just
bring Gasly
incredibly
back.
hard to be Max's second driver, dude.
But
Yeah.
you also have to think like Max and Checo, they seem to have like a really good dynamic going, and
Mm,
I mean Checo's performing right now. He's really performing, so it would be hard to, if he keeps it up for the rest of the year, it's hard to say, okay, I guess we should roll with Gasly. And then going off of Tyler's weird driver lineup that he came up with, I came up with this last week. What if Pierre goes to Ferrari?
No.
Pierre and Leclerc?
maybe. I mean,
I'm
Carlos
about to
is
say.
really good though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Carlos is
He
really good.
I think that's a long shot because I think Ferrari has found their driver lineup. That is that not Checo, Carlos and Leclerc. They belong in Ferrari red.
Mm,
That is Ferrari's lineup.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I read something yesterday that this is probably just as far-fetched as any other scenario, but Gasly might end up at Williams of all places, which would obviously be a huge
Whoa.
step backwards for him.
Whoa.
But in saying that, if I don't know, it really just comes down to what's available, because you can't really be too picky if there aren't that many seats available for the next year, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you can't. If you want to be an F1 driver, man, there's only 20 seats in the world, dude. You can't be begging.
I think it sounds like most likely scenario is he just gets locked back in at AlphaTauri,
Mm,
Yeah.
which I mean you could do worse. So I mean, I guess you just have to struggle for a little bit until your
Yeah.
opportunity shows up. You could wait out maybe Lewis. Maybe you're waiting out Checo. Who knows? But
yeah.
there's definitely moves to be made. But if I was Pierre, I'd just be looking for 1 year contracts to always be available
Mm,
and flexible.
Yeah.
mm.
Well, speaking of Red Bull, man, let's move into our last little thing. New rule: Max Verstappen safety car rule. You can't get up on a dude now when a safety car restart. You have to be behind them.
Well,
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean, go ahead, Rob.
like, I was just gonna say it's the fastest Aston Martin on the circuit at the moment.
Dude, I mean, yeah, it's not saying much, but yeah, you're totally right.
No, I think Team Lewis, all the Lewis fans are definitely pretty happy about seeing this rule change, because now it's like feeding into their narrative. Oh, Max is the fake champ, MVO, and all that crap. And it's like, yeah, now they're like, oh yeah, see, they made a new rule, so Lewis should have won. And I mean, I think Lewis could have won
Yeah.
too, but
Lewis should have won, man. We all know Lewis should have won. I think that's unanimous. I think Michael Massey he heavily influenced. I'm glad the new rule also that the team principals can't immediately start pleading their case on the radio when stuff happens. I'm
no,
glad
Michael, no.
it's just I'm glad that's a rule now, because now it's clear. Just like Max said, he made a comment on the white lines being the boundary for the race, that he just wants something to be clear. If it's the white lines, cool, keep it that way. Awesome. Everybody knows, that's it. Because this gray area stuff, that's where it gets all confusing.
Yeah, and I think they were both pushing the limits last year. I mean, yeah, Lewis is always pushing the limits of the track width. And then I think Max was like, okay, I guess I get to push it a little bit more. And then what I really hated was at the end of the season when they would just go, they were trying to keep each other, like force them to slow down before they would, and they were doing it so much they were running each other outside the track limits because they couldn't slow down enough for the turns. And then it was just, okay, I'll cut the corner, and then they'll make me slow down a little bit, but I still get an advantage. And I don't know, I thought it was kind of getting old.
Yeah, I think the rule would be received by most as positive, to be honest. I mean, I have all the respect for Max as a driver, but I've never been a huge fan of him, pushing those limits when he's right on the tail of Lewis or
Yeah.
Charles or anyone else. I just don't think it's in the spirit of racing.
No, it's you definitely are right. Max is such a very, you either love him or you hate him. I respect him to the millionth degree. I like that he races hard, but sometimes it is a little bit, okay, man, it's getting to the point where you are pushing the boundaries a lot. But yeah, I mean, Rob, you have been a pleasure to meet. You've been a pleasure to hang out with. It's been awesome getting both of our channels and Twitter handles to start collabing, because I think this community thing is perfect. But it's
Yeah.
been awesome, man.
Yeah, you guys have been great. Thanks for having me, Tyler, Chris. It's obviously great to talk to you both. And if anyone wants to find me on Twitter at F1 Fantasy Hub, always happy to take questions on the great fantasy game that I
Yes,
play.
all of his links will be in the description. Everything you need to know about Rob Beaumont and F1 Fantasy Hub on Twitter will be all over our YouTube description and Twitter posts, man. Y'all got to give him some love.
Thanks again,
Yep.
guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to have you, Rob. We'll definitely have to get you back on for another episode. This was a good one. It was pretty laid back.
Oh, yeah, this episode was great, man. I just want to give one more big shout out to Rob for joining us today, but that'll be it, guys. Catch us on the next one. This was episode 8 of the Lockup Podcast. Deuces, family.